Once again, a very warm welcome to you. This is the morning call here on Africanews. I am Nyasha K. Mutizwa. Now we start off in Tanzania, where the United States and the United Kingdom on Wednesday branded local elections of which Tanzania's ruling party won 99% of the seats as irregular and lacking credibility. The polls held last Sunday were boycotted by the opposition, citing violence and repressive legal environment. Analysts said the local polls have set a tone for the upcoming 2020 general elections. President Magufuli, who is expected to run again, has been strongly criticized by watchdogs for the human rights record of his 4-year government. Free media has been intimidated by draconian cybercrime laws. Critical newspapers and bloggers have been silenced, and opposition activists have been arrested. Ruth.
Indeed, in a number of cases, the candidates of Chama cha Mapinduzi, the ruling party, had no opponents in the elections. The opposition decided to boycott this election, protesting against intimidation of its candidates. However, for Washington and London, this result calls into question the quality of credibility of the electoral process.
And to understand more, we are joined by Oriem Nyeko via Skype. He is a Tanzania researcher from Human Rights Watch, joining us from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, your organization, the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, in October reported and said that the elections were dangerously repressive, and there was a dangerously repressive trend that was escalating in Tanzania. So just how bad has the civic space shrunk within the country?
Well, we've seen it shrink dramatically in the past 5 years. Of course, some of the things that we are seeing happening have predated his term, but they've intensified over the past couple of years since he was elected president. We've seen the government enact several laws that have been very restrictive to civil society, to activists, to journalists, to political opposition. We've also seen the government shut down radio stations and several newspapers since President Magufuli came into power. We've also seen the state authorities arrest and in some cases prosecute political opposition members after they were critical of the government. So we've seen a number of things that have happened over the course of a relatively short period of time that has made civic space in Tanzania extremely small and difficult for people with views that are counter to the government to operate.
Last January, Parliament passed a law seen as intended to strengthen President John Magufuli's power. What has been the consequence of this law so far?
Well, we haven't seen the full breadth of the consequences of the Political Parties Act of 2019, but given that we have just had local elections in Tanzania and we're going to be having general elections next year, there's a possibility that this law really could be used to further restrict the space in which political parties that are not the ruling party in Tanzania can operate. The law actually provides very wide powers for the registrar of parties, which allow them, the registrar, to do things including suspending party members or deregistering parties. So we haven't seen the full impact of that, but a lot of people anticipate that this law particularly could be used particularly to restrict the space in which opposition parties can exist.
Now, you touched on the general elections that are coming up next year, that is in November 2020. Do you think that there are fears that the political climate will become even more intense?
I think there are a lot of fears that the trend that we have seen happening in the past few years could continue to get worse. We have seen in some cases the government relent and make some changes in terms of the restricted space. A good example of that is the Statistics Act of 2015, which made it criminal for people who are independent of the government to publish statistics that the government hadn't approved of. The government changed that law mid this year. So while certain things have been getting worse, there's always opportunities for change and for the space to become less restricted as we head into elections. And that's something that we're actively campaigning for and urging the government to take into consideration, that when elections take place, the space for not only political opposition, but for media, for government critics really should be as open as possible in order to make those elections as free and fair as possible.